The sound of my father's raised voice stopped me cold outside his office door. In all my 19 years, I'd never heard him yell like that. Not even when I totaled his car last summer. You had no right, Veronica. No right at all. I pressed myself against the wall, heart hammering. The scholarship letter in my back pocket suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I'm protecting this family, Veronica shot back, her voice dripping with that fake concern she'd perfected over the years. Have you seen the cost of that program? It'll bankrupt us, Michael. And for what? So she can run off to chase some ridiculous dream. I'm Hazel, and this was the moment I realized my stepmother had been sabotaging my life for years. She earned that scholarship on her own merit, Dad said, his voice cracking. And you went behind our backs to try and get it revoked? Merit! Veronica laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Please, we both know she only got it because of that sob story about her dead mother. My fingers curled into fists. The acceptance letter crinkled. Don't you dare, Dad warned. Don't you dare bring Sarah into this. Why not? Everyone else does. Poor little Hazel lost her mother so young. It's all I ever hear about. But who's been here? Who's been raising her? Me. And this is how she repays me? By running off to that fancy art school across the country? I bit my lip until I tasted blood. 6 years of forced smiles, of yes, Veronica, and whatever you think is best, Veronica. 6 years of watching her slowly isolate my father, turn him against my dreams, piece by piece. The scholarship stays, Dad said firmly. And if I find out you've tried to interfere again? You'll what? Veronica's voice turned deadly quiet. Leave me. Go ahead. But remember who helped you rebuild your business after the recession. Remember whose connections saved this family from bankruptcy. You really want to throw all that away for her art school fantasy? The silence that followed felt like a knife in my chest. That's what I thought, Veronica continued. Now I have a lovely dinner planned. We'll discuss this like a proper family. I'm sure Hazel will understand once we explain the financial reality. My phone buzzed. A text from Evelyn. Did you tell them about the scholarship yet? I typed back with shaking fingers. No. But V found out somehow. It's bad. Want me to come over? Before I could reply, footsteps approached the door. I scrambled back, nearly tripping over my own feet. Veronica emerged, perfectly composed as always. Her eyes widened in fake surprise. Hazel, darling, how long have you been home? Her smile never reached her eyes. It never did. Just got here, I lied, matching her fake warmth with my own. Is everything okay? I thought I heard voices. Oh, your father and I were just discussing your future. She reached out to touch my cheek. I forced myself not to flinch. Why don't you join us for dinner? We have so much to talk about. Behind her, I caught a glimpse of my father through the doorway. He sat at his desk, head in his hands, defeated. In that moment, something inside me hardened. 6 years of playing nice, of trying to keep the peace, of watching this woman slowly poison everything I loved. Actually, I said, stepping back from her reach, I have plans with Evelyn. School project, can't miss it. Family comes first, dear. Her fingers twitched just slightly. Cancel your plans. I met her gaze steadily. No, I said. I don't think I will. Something dark flashed across her face, just for a second, but I saw it. And I knew then that the war she'd been waging in secret was about to become very, very public. I turned and walked away, my mind already racing with plans. If Veronica wanted to play games, fine. But she was about to learn that some people play to win. Evelyn's basement had always been our sanctuary, but tonight, it felt like a war room. I paced between the worn leather couch and the pool table, replaying the afternoon's confrontation while she watched me with growing concern. She actually tried to get your scholarship revoked. Evelyn's voice cracked with disbelief. That's next-level psycho, even for Veronica. I stopped pacing, fishing the crumpled acceptance letter from my pocket. Dad's signature is forged on this withdrawal request. Look at the date. 3 days ago. She must have gone through my room while I was at work. What are you going to do? The question hung in the air like smoke. Through the basement window, I caught glimpses of people walking past. Normal families heading home for normal dinners without wondering if their stepmother was plotting their downfall. Remember when she first moved in? I sank onto the couch. How she used to bring me those little art supplies. Watercolours, sketch pads, fancy pencils. Yeah, you were what, 13? 12! My laugh came out bitter. God, I actually thought she cared about my art. Turns out she was just marking her territory, making sure Dad saw her playing Mommy. My phone buzzed. Dad again. 4th missed call. You should talk to him, Evelyn said softly. And say what? Hey, Dad. Sorry your wife's a manipulative snake who's been sabotaging me since middle school. Maybe he needs to hear exactly that. Before I could respond, footsteps thundered down the basement stairs. Derek burst in, still wearing his work uniform from the garage. You okay? Got your text? He crossed to the couch, pulling me close. The familiar smell of motor oil and cologne steadied my nerves. I'm fine, just family drama. Bullshit. He pulled back, studying my face. You're shaking. Evelyn tossed him the forged withdrawal letter. His expression darkened as he read. This is illegal, he said finally. We should report her. To who? The evil stepmother police. The actual police. This is fraud. My phone buzzed again. This time a text from Veronica. Your father is very disappointed in your behaviour. Come home so we can discuss this as a family. I showed them the message. Evelyn swore under her breath. Classic manipulation, she said, making it sound like your dad's the one who's upset when she's the one pulling strings. You can stay at my place, Derek offered. My roommate's gone for the week. The offer was tempting, but running would only prove Veronica right, that I was too immature, too unstable for the scholarship program. My phone chimed again. This time it was Sophie, Veronica's best friend. Hey, sweetie, heard about the scholarship situation. Let's grab coffee tomorrow, just us girls. That's weird, Evelyn said, reading over my shoulder. Since when does Sophie reach out to you directly? Since never. I forwarded the text to them both. Think Veronica put her up to it? Obviously, Derek scoffed. But maybe we can use that. Evelyn sat up straighter. What do you mean? Sophie knows all Veronica's secrets, right? And, lately, I've noticed tension between them at the country club. I turned to face him. What kind of tension? The kind where Sophie drinks too much at ladies' brunch and starts venting about feeling used. Trust me, there's bad blood there. A plan started forming in my mind. So if someone were to encourage that tension... Exactly. Derek squeezed my hand. Fight fire with fire. It's risky, Evelyn warned. If Veronica figures out you're turning her friends against her, what's she gonna do? I stood up, suddenly energized. Try to ruin my life? Too late. My phone buzzed one final time. Dad, please come home, kiddo, we need to talk. I stared at the message, remembering his defeated posture in the office. How long had Veronica been manipulating him? How many other times had she sabotaged things behind our backs? I'm going home, I announced, but not to make peace. Want backup? Derek asked. I shook my head. I need to handle this part alone, but tomorrow. I looked at my friends, feeling a surge of gratitude for their loyalty. Tomorrow we start planning. Planning what? Evelyn asked. I thought about all the little cruelties, all the subtle manipulations over the years. How Veronica had slowly poisoned everything good in our family while maintaining her perfect stepmother facade. Planning how to make her mask slip, I said, in front of everyone. Sophie's coffee shop suggestion turned out to be the most expensive place in town. Of course it was. I watched her stir her third sugar packet into her latte, wondering how many of Veronica's secrets that perfectly glossed smile was hiding. I've known your stepmother for 15 years, Sophie said, tapping her spoon against the rim. She means well, even if her methods are unconventional. Unconventional? The word tasted like acid. Is that what we're calling fraud now? Sophie's smile flickered. The scholarship withdrawal was extreme, I'll admit, but she's just trying to protect you from what? Success? Independence? A group of women at the next table glanced over. Sophie lowered her voice. From making the same mistakes she did. Did you know she went to art school too? That stopped me cold. What? Before she met your father? She was quite talented. Sophie's perfectly manicured nails drummed against her cup. Then her first husband died, leaving her with nothing but student debt and unfinished paintings. My phone buzzed. Derek found something interesting in V's old social media. Call me. What happened to her art? I asked, buying time. Life happened. Bills. Reality. Sophie leaned forward. She doesn't want you struggling like she did. So instead of warning me, she forges documents and tries to sabotage my future. You don't understand how much she... You're right. I cut her off. I don't understand. Just like I don't understand why you're really here. Something shifted in Sophie's expression. A crack in her polished veneer. What do you mean? Veronica sent you to do damage control, but you're not telling me everything. She sat back, studying me with new interest. You're sharper than she gives you credit for, and you're not as loyal as she thinks you are. The words hung between us like smoke. Sophie's hand trembled slightly as she reached for her purse. Be careful, Hazel, she said quietly. Veronica doesn't handle betrayal well. Ask her sister. She doesn't have a sister. Sophie stood, dropping cash on the table. Exactly. My phone buzzed again as she walked away. This time it was Evelyn. Emergency. V's at the school board meeting right now. Ice shot through my veins. The scholarship committee meeting, the one where they finalized fall admissions. I ran out of the coffee shop, dialing Derek. He answered on the first ring. Found her old wedding announcement, he said without preamble. Before your dad. Get this, her first husband didn't die. He left her after she... Tell me later. I cut him off, already sprinting toward my car. She's at the school board. We need everything you found, now. On it. Meet you there. The drive to the administration building was a blur. I found Evelyn pacing outside, clutching a manila folder. She's telling them you cheated on your portfolio submission, she said, shoving the folder at me. But I got copies of all your original work submissions from Mrs. Chen. Every dated draft, every progress photo. My hands shook as I flipped through the evidence. 6 years of work. 6 years of dreams she was trying to destroy. How long has she been in there? 20 minutes. They're in the main conference room. I started toward the door, but Evelyn caught my arm. Wait, she said. There's more. Sophie called me right after you met. Said to check Veronica's history with the Sterling Art Institute. That's where she went to school. Where she taught. Until she was fired for selling student work as her own. The pieces clicked together like a terrible puzzle. Her obsession with my art supplies. The way she'd hover when I worked. All those suggestions about signing my pieces differently. She wasn't preparing to be a supportive stepmother, I whispered. She was marking her territory, making sure everyone knew she was the real artist in the family. Hazel. Evelyn's voice was urgent. If she convinces them you cheated. She won't. I pushed through the building's doors, clutching my evidence folder like a shield. Behind me, I heard Derek's car screech into the parking lot. Ahead, voices drifted from the conference room, including Veronica's, smooth as honey, and twice as toxic. I hate to bring this to your attention, but as someone who deeply values artistic integrity, I took a deep breath, squaring my shoulders. Time to show her what real artistic integrity looked like. Ready? Evelyn whispered beside me. I thought of Sophie's warning about betrayal, about Veronica's mysterious sister, about all the lives she'd poisoned before mine. Ready, I said, and pushed open the conference room door. The Sterling Art Institute's records arrived in a plain manila envelope, but the contents hit like a bomb. I spread the documents across Derek's kitchen table while Evelyn paced behind me. Terminated for ethical violations, I read aloud. Multiple incidents of unauthorized use of student work. Keep reading, Derek said, pointing to the next paragraph. Following investigation, Professor Veronica Mitchell agreed to resign quietly in exchange for... My voice caught. in exchange for destroying all evidence of student complaints. Evelyn stopped pacing. She didn't just steal their work, she erased their voices. My phone lit up with Dad's message. Coming home tonight. We need to talk about what happened at the school board. The school board meeting had been a disaster. Not because I'd failed to defend myself, but because Veronica had turned it into exactly what she wanted, a public spectacle of concern for her troubled stepdaughter. I should have seen it coming, I said, shuffling through more documents. The way she cried in front of the committee, talking about how worried she was about my unstable behavior and concerning patterns. She's good, Derek admitted. Making herself look like the victim while destroying you? That's next-level manipulation. Another document caught my eye. A newspaper clipping from 15 years ago. Local artist wins regional prize. The photo showed a younger Veronica beside a hauntingly familiar painting. That's your style, Evelyn whispered. The way you layer colours, the composition. No, I corrected her, hands shaking. That's my mother's style. The room went silent. I pulled up a photo on my phone, one of my mum's last paintings before she died. The similarities were undeniable. She didn't just want to stop me from going to art school, I said slowly. She wanted to erase every trace of my mother's influence. That's why she pushed me toward different techniques all these years. Derek's phone buzzed. Sophie wants to meet, says she has something we need to see. It's a trap, Evelyn warned. Maybe, I said, still staring at the painting. But we need more proof. You have proof, Evelyn gestured at the documents. Take this to your dad. Show him what she really is. I thought about Dad's message, about the way he looked at Veronica even now, like she was his salvation after Mom died. The truth would destroy him. There's something else, Derek said quietly. Something Sophie mentioned about Veronica's sister. The one who supposedly doesn't exist. He pulled up an old social media post. Meet Christina Mitchell, Veronica's younger sister, also an artist. The photo showed two women, arms linked, smiling at a gallery opening. The caption read, "Sisters sharing their passion for art." What happened to her? Evelyn asked. That's the thing, Derek scrolled through more posts. She just disappears. No death notice, no explanation. Just gone, right after Veronica started teaching at Sterling. My phone buzzed again. Veronica this time. Your father's very disappointed. But we can fix this if you're willing to be honest about your issues. The pieces clicked together like a terrible puzzle. Christina's disappearance, the stolen artwork, the systematic destruction of anyone who threatened Veronica's artistic identity. She's not going to stop, I realized. The school board was just the beginning. She'll keep going until she's destroyed everything I am. So what do we do? Evelyn asked. I looked at the documents spread across the table, at my mother's artistic legacy that Veronica had tried to erase, at the evidence of lives she'd ruined before mine. We find Christina, I said, and we make Veronica face every person she's ever silenced. That's dangerous, Derek warned. If she did something to her own sister, then I need to know what I'm really dealing with. I started gathering the documents, because this isn't just about my future anymore. It's about making sure she never does this to anyone else. My phone lit up one last time. Sophie, meeting tonight. Come alone. There's something you need to know about Christina. I showed them the message. Don't go, they said in unison. But we all knew I would. Because sometimes the only way to fight a monster is to walk straight into their lair. I just hoped I was ready for whatever truth waited there. Sophie's hands trembled as she slid the envelope across the diner table. Outside, rain pelted the windows, turning the parking lot lights into blurry halos. The late-night crowd had thinned to a few truckers and an elderly couple sharing pie. Christina's alive, Sophie said quietly, but Veronica made sure she'll never paint again. I stared at the envelope, afraid to touch it. What did she do? It's not what she did. It's what she threatened to do. Sophie glanced over her shoulder. Christina had evidence, proof that Veronica had been stealing student work for years, but she also had a young daughter. My phone buzzed. Derek, V just left your house, heading your way, get out now. I ignored it. Where is Christina now? Working at a hardware store in Oregon? Living under her married name? Sophie's mascara was smudged beneath her eyes. She gave up everything, her art, her identity, her whole life, to protect her daughter from Veronica's revenge. The envelope felt heavy as I picked it up. Inside were photos, Christina's gallery openings, her reviews in art magazines, her rising star suddenly snuffed out. Why are you showing me this? Because Veronica's doing it again. She's already contacted the dean at your art school, planted seeds about your instability. She's building a case just like she did with Christina. My phone lit up again. Evelyn this time. Your dad found the Sterling documents. He's furious. Call him. What exactly did she do to Christina's daughter? I asked. Sophie's voice dropped to a whisper. She arranged accidents, small ones at first, a fall at school, food poisoning, a bike crash. Nothing fatal, just enough to send a message. The elderly couple paid their bill and left. Rain drummed harder against the windows. And now she's targeting me. No, Sophie leaned forward. She's targeting everyone you love. Derek's garage. The health inspection wasn't random. Your friend Evelyn's college recommendation being rescinded. Not a clerical error. My hands clenched into fists. Why are you telling me this? You're her friend. I was Christina's friend first. Sophie's eyes hardened. And I've spent 15 years watching Veronica destroy people. It has to stop. The diner's bell chimed. Through the rain-streaked windows, I saw a familiar car pull into the lot. She's here, Sophie whispered. Remember what I said about Christina. There are worse things than giving up your dreams. I stood, shoving the envelope into my bag. I'm not Christina. No, Sophie's smile was sad. You're worse. You're Sarah's daughter. And that's why she'll never stop until she's erased every trace of your mother's talent from your work. The diner's door opened. I heard the click of expensive heels on linoleum. Hazel, darling. Veronica's voice dripped honey. What a surprise running into you here. I turned slowly. She stood there in her perfect clothes, perfect makeup, perfect smile. But now I saw the cracks, the slight tremor in her hand, the tightness around her eyes. Sophie and I were just discussing art, I said, specifically the Sterling Art Institute's faculty records. The smile flickered. Oh? How fascinating. Sophie, I didn't realize you and my stepdaughter had become so close. We were actually talking about Christina, I pressed. Your sister? The one who disappeared? Veronica's mask slipped for just a second, long enough to see something dark and hungry beneath. Sophie, dear, I think it's time you headed home. Sophie stood, gathering her purse. As she passed me, she whispered, Choose carefully. Some victories cost more than defeat. I watched her hurry out into the rain, leaving me alone with the monster who'd married my father. Shall we discuss this at home? Veronica gestured to the door. Your father's quite concerned about your recent behavior. I thought about Christina, living in exile to protect her child, about my mother's artistic legacy, slowly being erased, about Derek's garage and Evelyn's future. No, I said quietly. I think we should discuss it right here. All of it. Unless you'd prefer the police handle the investigation into Christina's disappearance. Veronica's smile turned razor-sharp. Oh, sweetheart, you really are your mother's daughter. She slid into the booth across from me. Let's talk about what happens to people who threaten my family. Outside, the rain kept falling, washing away any chance of escape. The police station's fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across Dad's face as he stared at the photos spread before him. Christina's evidence, the Sterling Institute documents, everything I'd gathered to expose Veronica. She says you've been stalking her sister, he said quietly, that you've become obsessed. Dad, the restraining order is temporary. His voice cracked. But Hazel, they found those threatening emails on your laptop. My blood ran cold. What emails? To Christina, to Sophie. He pushed a printout across the table. To Veronica's old students. all sent from your account." The words blurred before my eyes. Emails I'd never written, threatening violence against everyone who'd wronged me, all perfectly crafted to make me sound unhinged. "She planted them," I whispered. "She must have accessed my computer when—" "Stop." Dad pressed his hands against his temples. "Just stop. The doctors think—" "Doctors?" The interview room door opened. Veronica glided in, followed by a man in a white coat. Her eyes were red-rimmed, perfectly portraying the concerned stepmother. "Dr. Reynolds specializes in acute psychiatric episodes," she said softly. "He's agreed to help us understand what's happening." The doctor sat down, opening a file. "Your father and stepmother have described some concerning behaviors, Hazel. Paranoid delusions, conspiracy theories, escalating aggression." "This isn't real," I laughed, the sound sharp and desperate. "Dad, you can't believe—" "We found your mother's paintings," Veronica interrupted. "The ones you've been copying, claiming they're your original work, adding dates to make it look like I stole from you when really—" My phone buzzed in my pocket. Derek. But before I could reach for it, Veronica continued. "And poor Sophie. Having to file a restraining order against you after you threatened her daughter." "What?" I turned to Dad. "That's not—" "The emails were quite graphic," the doctor said, "describing how you'd make her pay for betraying you." Another buzz. Evelyn this time. But the officer by the door stepped closer, watching my movements. "We just want to help." Veronica reached for my hand. I jerked away. "A short stay at the treatment center, some medication to stabilize your mood." "Dad," I pleaded, "look at me. You know me." He wouldn't meet my eyes. I thought I did. My phone buzzed a third time. The officer frowned. "Phone, please," he said. "Protocol for psychiatric holds." The world tilted sideways. This was her endgame. Not just destroying my future, but my credibility, my sanity, everything I could use against her. "Christina," I said desperately. "Call Christina, she'll tell you." "Your obsession with my sister has to stop." Veronica's voice hardened. "She's dead, Hazel. She died 15 years ago. I showed you the death certificate, but she hadn't. That was the mistake. The single thread that could unravel everything." "No," I said slowly. "You didn't." Something flickered in her eyes. Fear. My phone buzzed one final time. A text preview lit up the screen before the officer could grab it. "Found Christina. She's alive. Video proof. Holding for—" The phone went dark in the officer's hand. But I'd seen enough. Veronica had too, judging by the way her perfectly manicured nails dug into her palms. "I think," the doctor said, "given the severity of the delusions, immediate intervention would be best." 2 orderlies appeared in the doorway. Dad stood, finally looking at me with tears in his eyes. "It's just for a few days," he said, "until you're thinking clearly again." I looked at Veronica, at her mask of concern hiding the triumph beneath. She'd orchestrated everything perfectly. The evidence against her would be dismissed as the ravings of a mentally ill teenager. My father would sign whatever papers she put in front of him, and I'd disappear into a system designed to make people doubt their own reality. Just like Christina had disappeared, just like all the others who'd threatened Veronica's carefully constructed world. The orderlies stepped forward with a wheelchair. "Standard protocol," they said, "for my own safety." But as they reached for me, I remembered Sophie's words. Some victories cost more than defeat. I had to choose, fight now and prove Veronica right about my instability, or submit and pray Derek's message meant what I thought it did. "Okay," I whispered, sinking into the wheelchair. "You win." Veronica's smile was radiant with false compassion. But she didn't see me slip the police interview room recording device into my sock, the one that had captured every word of her careful manipulation. Sometimes surrender is just another way to fight. The treatment center's visiting rooms smelled like artificial lemons and despair. 3 days of observation had taught me the camera's blind spots, the staff's rotation schedule, and exactly how long I had before someone noticed the recording device missing from my sock. Christina sat across from me, her hands trembling around her paper coffee cup. She looked nothing like the vibrant artist in those old photos. Her hair was grey now, her eyes haunted. "I shouldn't be here," she whispered. "If Veronica finds out—" "She already knows." I slid my phone across the table, showing her the security footage Derek had captured. "You've been watching me for weeks, haven't you? Ever since Sophie reached out?" She nodded, tears welling. "I had to make sure you weren't like her, that helping you wouldn't put my daughter at risk again." The door opened. Veronica swept in, perfectly coiffed even at this early hour. Her smile froze when she saw Christina. "Well," she said softly, "the prodigal sister returns." "Hello, Veronica. Here to fuel more of Hazel's delusions?" Veronica sat beside me, maternal concern radiating from every pore. "The doctors say she's been making excellent progress. We wouldn't want to trigger another episode." I pressed play on the hidden recorder. Veronica's own voice filled the room. "Your obsession with my sister has to stop. She's dead, Hazel. She died 15 years ago." Christina's hands stopped shaking. "I'm very much alive, sister dear. And I brought proof of everything you did, every painting you stole, every student you threatened, every accident that befell my daughter until I agreed to disappear." "Careful," Veronica's voice turned silky. "False accusations can be so damaging to one's credibility. Just ask Hazel about her recent psychiatric evaluation." "That's why I'm not the one making the accusations." The door opened again. Dad walked in, followed by Detective Martinez and Sophie. My father's face was ashen as he held up a USB drive. "The emails," he said. "The ones you claimed Hazel sent. The IP address traces back to our home computer, during hours when Hazel was documented at work." "Michael, don't," his voice cracked. "Just don't." Detective Martinez stepped forward. "We have a warrant to search your devices, Mrs. Mitchell, and statements from multiple former Sterling Institute students." Veronica's mask cracked, just for a second. Then she laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "You ungrateful little snake," she hissed at me. "I gave you everything, a mother's love, guidance, protection." "You gave me chains," I said quietly. "Just like you gave Christina. Like you gave all of them." "I made them better artists." "You stole their work," Christina's voice hardened. "Their dreams, their futures. I improved them. Added my expertise, my vision." "Added," Dad interrupted. "Or stole, like you stole my daughter's college fund. The money I thought was going to her tuition." Veronica stood backing toward the door, but Sophie blocked her path. "It's over," Sophie said. "No more manipulation, no more threats. You're all conspiring against me." Veronica's perfectly manicured hands clawed at her throat. "I won't let you destroy everything I've built. I won't—" She lunged for my phone, probably hoping to destroy the evidence, but her designer heel caught on the industrial carpet. She stumbled, catching herself against the wall, right beside my latest painting, the one I'd done in my mother's style, the one the doctors had allowed as art therapy. Veronica stared at it, something breaking in her expression. "You'll never be her," she whispered. "You'll never be Sarah. No matter how perfectly you copy her technique." "I'm not trying to be her," I said. "I'm being myself. That's what terrifies you, isn't it? That I might succeed where you failed?" The detective stepped forward with handcuffs. Veronica didn't resist, her eyes fixed on the painting. "You think this is victory?" she asked softly. "You think exposing me will heal what's broken inside you?" "No," I stood, gathering my evidence. "But it will stop you from breaking anyone else." As they led her away, I caught Christina's eye. She nodded once, understanding passing between us. Some victories don't feel like winning. Some battles leave scars even after justice is served. But watching Veronica's perfect facade finally shatter completely, that felt like freedom. Dad wrapped his arm around my shoulders as we walked out, leaving the artificial lemon smell and the ghost of Veronica's control behind us. Sometimes the greatest act of revenge is simply refusing to become what your monster wanted you to be. The gallery lights cast soft shadows across my mother's paintings. The real ones this time, rescued from Veronica's storage unit along with dozens of other stolen works. Christina stood beside me, both of us reflected in the glass protecting Summer Storm, Mum's last completed piece. She never could capture light quite like Sarah did, Christina said quietly. That's what drove her mad, you know. Not just the stealing, but the knowing. That she'd never be as genuine as the artists she destroyed. The exhibition, Reclaimed Voices, the Sterling Institute Recovery Project, had drawn hundreds. Former students, art critics, collectors, all here to reclaim what Veronica had stolen, to restore names to unsigned works, to heal old wounds. Dad appeared beside us, his tie slightly crooked. The detective wants to know if you'll testify at the sentencing hearing. I watched a young artist across the room discover her lost portfolio, tears streaming down her face as she traced her signature under Veronica's painted-over name. No, let the others tell their stories. I have something different in mind. Sophie approached, carrying a newspaper. The headline read, "Former art professor pleads guilty to fraud, theft of student works." "She's asking to see you," Sophie said, "claims she has something to say before they transfer her." She always has something to say. I turned away from Mum's painting. But I have work to do. That work waited in my studio. Not the basement room where Veronica had tried to shape me in her image, but a sun-filled space overlooking the city. My easel held a half-finished piece, nothing like Mum's style or Veronica's stolen techniques. Something entirely new. Derek found me there later, as sunset painted the windows gold. The exhibition's a success. They're already talking about touring it nationally. Good. I added another layer of paint, watching the colours blend. They deserve to have their work seen. Their real work. Under their real names. "And what about your work?" He gestured to the canvas. "This is different from anything you've done before." "Because it's finally mine." I stepped back, studying the emerging image. Not what Mum would have painted. Not what Veronica tried to force me to be. Just me. Evelyn burst in, waving her phone. "You need to see this now." The screen showed security footage from the county jail. Veronica sat in her cell, methodically tearing pages from a sketchbook. Each sheet contained perfect copies of other artists' works, as if she couldn't create anything else even now. "She's still doing it," Evelyn whispered, "still trying to steal other people's light." "No." I set down my brush. "She's showing us who she always was. A reflection without a source. A mirror with nothing of her own to show." Dad called that evening, his voice tired but clear. "The divorce papers are filed, and I found something you should see." In his study, he opened Mom's old journal. A letter fell out, dated just before she died. "To my daughter, the artist who will paint her own sky." My hands shook as I read her words. "Don't let anyone tell you which colours to use or which stories to tell. Your art, like your heart, belongs only to you." I thought of Veronica in her cell, endlessly copying others' work. Of Christina, finally free to paint again. Of all the artists reclaiming their stolen voices. "I'm not going to testify," I told Dad, "but I am going to paint her portrait. One last piece showing exactly who she is." "Are you sure that's wise?" I looked at my latest work, at the unique style emerging from the canvas. She tried to make me choose between being Mom and being her. But there was always a third option, being myself. The portrait would show Veronica surrounded by mirrors, each reflecting someone else's art, her own face blank and empty at the centre. A warning, perhaps, or maybe just the truth she never could face. "Sometimes," Christina had said at the gallery, "the best revenge is simply creating something your monster could never copy." I picked up my brush again as night fell, ready to paint my own sky. Behind me, Mom's journal lay open to her final words. "The greatest masterpiece you'll ever create is the artist you become." Veronica had tried to steal that future, but in the end, she'd only helped me find it.
Unaware of how appalled I was, my husband boldly declared, "Alyssa, Let's sell your parents' house. It's a really good deal. She helped us with it, so I got such a good offer. Overlook my affair, will you? Who would sell it? This cheater. Don't take people for fools. I am Alyssa. I have been married to my husband Chris for 5 years. Our beloved son turned 4. We had what you might call a shotgun wedding, and our child was born soon after we married. We've been trying to parent together, making it up as we go along. We plan to continue cooperating and want another child. I thought, of course, he felt the same. However, around the time our son turned 3, suddenly, his enthusiasm for parenting cooled. The trigger was probably our son starting his terrible twos. As soon as our adorable son began to show his own will, Chris retired from parenting. Given his nature, easily heated and cooled, it's surprising he focused on parenting for 3 years. At the same time, something very shocking happened. Both of my parents fell ill and passed away. Even though they were very close, they didn't have to synchronize their passing to heaven. I visit my childhood home once a month to maintain it since my parents left it to us. I have a younger brother, but he works far away, so I mainly manage the house. They say a house deteriorates quickly if no one lives in it. So I air out the rooms and pull weeds in the garden. It takes an hour by car to my childhood home. The first few times, my husband came with me. But gradually he stopped, and now it's just my son and I. My son loves running around the large house and yard. I'm reluctant to let go of this house that means so much to me. But it's been 2 years since my parents passed away. It might be time to let it go. That thought crossed my mind. When I came home a bit earlier than planned, an unfamiliar car was parked in our driveway. It was a cute compact car. Inside, there were several large stuffed animals like those from an arcade. Why is such a car here? I had a bad feeling. I carried my sleeping son and quietly opened the front door. Cute pumps were carelessly tossed in the entryway. And down the hallway leading to the bedroom, clothes were scattered. Shirts, pants, a dress. I felt the blood drain from my face. I immediately knew whose the discarded clothes were. My husband's clothes. But the dress wasn't mine. Nor the shoes. Most likely, my husband and someone else were in the bedroom. Why, how, why? While I panicked, a calm part of me remained. This was an affair. Evidence. I must preserve the evidence. I used my smartphone to record the situation inside. Should I just go in and confront my husband and his lover in the bedroom? Yes, I should confront them and ask what they think they're doing. At that moment, my sleeping son murmured, His voice brought me back to reality. What if my husband lashes out or the lover causes trouble, and my child is in danger? I hadn't thought my husband was capable of that, but suddenly I was worried. I bit my lip in frustration and decided against storming into the affair scene. I turned back, returned to my car, and took a deep breath. That man, he won't get away with this. A little before the time my son and I were supposed to return home, the front door opened. Out came a flashy, gal-like woman and my husband. They waved and smiled at each other and kissed. Goodbye. I made sure to capture that scene with my camera. My son was being watched by a mom friend. My mom friend had agreed to my sudden request to watch my son for 2 hours. I'll explain later. I don't know what happened, but you can talk to me about anything, she had said. Reliable. I'm grateful. Right after the lover left, I stood up. First, I'll deal with my husband. The lover comes after. I felt like I was storming a dojo as I opened the door to our house. I'm home. Oh, welcome back. You're early. My husband was flustered. Of course. The clothes he had scattered were still all over the floor. The bedroom must still be a mess. That woman, if you're going to cheat, at least clean up after yourself. Who was that person just now? What? Just now? My husband's agitation ignited my anger. Don't mess with me. I have proof. Stop playing dumb and admit to the affair. You scum. Kissing in the entryway, how does that feel? No way. My husband yelled, unable to continue, his mouth agape like a fish. Who is that woman? What were you thinking? How long have you been cheating? She was introduced by a senior. We've been together since last Valentine's. Last year. That's surprisingly long. And last Valentine's was around the time he lost his enthusiasm for parenting. You neglected our beloved son because of your lover. Unbelievable. My husband was flailing his hands and looking around nervously. I have something to say. For some reason, you think I'm going to start the conversation. Just wait a minute. With that, my husband ran to the living room and came back from the dining room with a stack of papers. Look at this. He thrust the papers at me aggressively. Reluctantly, I looked at them. What's this? A real estate sales contract? Yes. What is this, some kind of quiz? Here's the question. When a wife confronted her cheating husband, he produced a real estate sales contract. What is the husband trying to convey? Such a tough question, who could know? I skimmed through the papers irritably. As I read further, I began to feel an urgency that couldn't be ignored. The documents detailed the sale of my parents' house. Hold on. Why is my parents' house being sold? The revelation of my husband's affair was shocking enough. But the sale of my parents' home was completely unexpected. The answer to the earlier quiz seems to be: the affair was for the sake of the real estate transaction. The truth of the matter seems to be drifting further away. Chris started to speak. That girlfriend I mentioned earlier. Her name is Mandy. She knows this incredible man named Mr. Hill, who's involved in various businesses and even runs seminars. I've been to a few seminars with Mandy, and he's really impressive. My dad and mom have completely trusted Mr. Hill too. He knows a lot of celebrities. He said he would buy your parents' house. It's a win-win since he can buy properties cheaper than the market price. And we get a lot more money than going through a real estate agent. I met with Mr. Hill today and signed the contract. Mandy, the mistress, and now a new character, Ms. Hill, appear. Celebrities. Seminars. Real estate transactions. An excited husband. Things are finally starting to make sense. It seemed my husband's next interest had shifted to a very dubious area. While thinking he was foolish, it somehow made sense. However, I didn't want to be involved. Unaware of my disgust, my husband boldly declared, "Alyssa, let's sell that house. No one's living there anymore. And it wouldn't be a problem if it's gone, right? We could make a fortune from the junk. Great, isn't it? Mandy helped me with this, so overlook my affair, will you?" What? And Mandy told me about this, but there's a nice new property for sale now. Let's use the money from selling your family home as a down payment and buy that house. What are you talking about? I'm talking about our future. It's a spacious and beautiful house, with a guest room. I can hold seminars there. On days I'm not holding seminars, I'll invite Mandy over. Great idea, right? I'm appalled. I felt the strength drain from my body. You're being deceived. It's a shady business, you should pull out. I was about to say that, but I stopped. Here's the question. Why didn't the wife try to correct her deceived husband? The answer is simple. Because he's no longer my husband. Overlook an affair? What are you talking about after trying to sell my precious family home without permission? Invite Mandy to the guest room? What do you intend to do in a house where I and our son also live? To think I've been married to such a foolish man for 5 years. No way. What? I spoke from the bottom of my stomach. I refuse. How could I let go of my family home for a stupid like you, you lowest of men? I was surprised that a stupid it came from my vocabulary, but at this point, it didn't matter. What did you say? That would cause trouble. I'd lose Mr. Hill's trust. I don't care. I threw a bundle of papers. I'm leaving this house. Where's the travel bag? It's in the bedroom. The place where my foolish husband and Mandy were getting cozy. Damn, I don't want to go. But I have no choice but to retrieve my bag. Ignoring my noisy husband crying out, I packed our belongings. My sons and my stuff, and as much as I could carry of what was important, and I left the house. I can't stay in such a place any longer. After leaving the house, I went to pick up my son. I explained to my mom friend that I had stormed into my husband's affair. And gave her sweets as a thank you for her sudden help. She sympathized and expressed concern. Then, I knocked on the door of a law office to consult about my husband trying to sell my property without permission. I also mentioned his obsession with a dubious seminar and his irrational behavior. The lawyer empathetically listened to my concerns. A consultation fee of $50 for 30 minutes is not cheap. I paid a total of $200 for 2 hours. But it was worth it as I learned all possible countermeasures. The call from my husband came around noon the next day. Hey, let's talk. This time was during his company's lunch break. My deduction is, last night he cried to his parents. Overslept in the morning, and finally called during lunch break. His tone suggested he thought I might have cooled down by now. Yes. I've completely cooled down. My affection for you, that is. Yeah. I thought we needed to talk too. Right? I was troubled when you suddenly ran off. Frustrated. But, I must endure. Arguing over every little thing won't help us progress. Maybe we just can't continue as a couple anymore? I guess so. I think so too. I can't believe you don't see the greatness in Mr. Hill and Mandy. If you were willing to move to the next stage with me like my parents, I think we could continue as a couple. I can't do that. What's this next stage? I'll hold off on any unnecessary comments for now. You live freely with our child. I'll have fun living with Mandy and my parents. We're getting a divorce. Understood. But I'm not selling my family home. Oh. About that. His solemn voice brightened a bit. Give me that building as compensation. What? You can't appreciate being connected to those two. So it's only natural you pay me compensation. Look, this is America. You cheated, meaning you are the culpable spouse. Why would a culpable spouse get compensation? That's the difference between you and me. Enough. I don't care about the laws of Stupid Island. Stay away. Knock on wood. Fine. I'll get a lawyer. It's better for you to just give it up willingly than to go through a lawsuit. Does he have a lawyer familiar with the laws of Stupid Island? Fine. But I'll get a lawyer too. Based on American law, I'll claim compensation for the affair. And child support. Also about the divorce, I want to do it now. It's your lunch break, right? Meet at the municipal office now and submit the paperwork. If you can't, I'll bring the divorce papers to your office right now. Sigh. His deep sigh was grating. Annoying. But apparently, he disliked the idea of me bringing divorce papers to his office enough to come to the municipal office right away. Without exchanging a word, my husband and I submitted the divorce papers. 2 mom friends came along to sign as witnesses. I wouldn't have minded if Mr. Hill and Mandy had signed for him either. After divorcing, I took my son and returned to our hometown. We decided to live in the empty family home. I left all the bothersome dealings with my ex-husband to the lawyer. By the time several months had passed, my son had fully adjusted to the new environment. His terrible twos were also starting to settle down. Fortunately, he never asked to see his father, which I was grateful for. I started working and was living a fulfilling life. Then one day, my ex-husband called. I didn't want to answer. What are lawyers for, if not for this? Ignore, ignore, ignore. But the enemy was persistent. He left countless calls from morning till night, and I snapped. I decided to answer the next call. It came within 10 minutes. All right, let's settle this. You're persistent. Talk to my lawyer. Whoa. Is that the first thing you say after so long? Yes. It's been several months, after all. But after being ignored this long, you should give up. What do you want, huh? Please forgive my harsh words. You're at your family home now, right? Yes, but then why can't you submit a change of residence form? Huh? I responded coolly to my ex-husband's irrational anger, but a possibility had sprung to mind. Advised by the lawyer I consulted before our divorce. I need to sell your family home. Give me the address. Are you still saying that? Well, my argument will prevail sooner or later, so I'm going to sell that house anyway. I just bought a new one and need the money urgently. So I thought I'd get the paperwork done first. No, your argument won't prevail. Your lawyer is Japanese too. Both lawyers are looking for a middle ground in their discussions. According to my lawyer. The other lawyer is fed up because my ex-husband keeps making legally untenable claims. If it goes to court, my ex-husband's lawyer might resign. By the way, after getting my address, what were you planning to do next? Mr. Hill knows the details. He told me that if I change your address and register a seal at the new address, I can change the building registration. You're too stupid to know that. But when I tried to submit your change of address at the city office, they told me it didn't match the current address and didn't accept it. I wrote down your family home's address properly. What's going on? Change of address, huh? In the US, that's a serious crime, you know. Serious? What is he focusing on? This was indeed the scheme discussed by the lawyer I consulted. Change someone's address without permission and rewrite the building registration and sell it. That's the scheme. To avoid falling victim to this, I temporarily moved my residence registration to a place other than my family home. It's my brother's place. My ex-husband doesn't know my brother's address. It seems I'm living in that state. Considering unforeseen circumstances, I've also restricted access to my family register. So my ex-husband can't change my address without permission. He certainly can't sell my parents' house without permission. Thank you to the lawyer for informing me. A crime, how rude. I just did as Mr. Hill told me. To Mr. Hill, you're a handyman willing to commit crimes. You also had your mistress forge my power of attorney, didn't you? That's forgery of a private document and also its use, right? Huh, but I've already made a sales contract for your parents' house. With Mr. Hill. Mandy has forged documents before, so she said she could handle it. Then Mandy and Mr. Hill are accomplices. They're teaming up to set you up. What? Mr. Hill probably decided my ex-husband was too foolish. Perhaps the plan to sell my parents' house was discovered too quickly. The divorce happened in an instant. The divorce negotiations didn't go well either. They had no plan to take my parents' house from me. So they probably thought they couldn't make money off him anymore. And tried to sell him a new construction and then disappear. Well, that's just speculation. Thinking about my ex-husband possibly turning pale over the phone makes me feel both pathetic and pitiful. Recently, my dad started saying similar things. He suspects Mr. Hill and Mandy too. He says we should consult the police. But, oh, my father-in-law came to his senses. That's good to hear. It's no longer my concern. I think you should listen to your father. You're quick to heat up and lose sight of your surroundings when you focus. You can't distinguish between good and bad, you're just clueless. So, don't contact me ever again. That's what I said as I hung up the phone. I felt relieved after saying what I wanted to say and I blocked his number. Now, I'm just watching from a higher ground. Later on, my ex-husband followed his father-in-law's advice and went to the police. And Mr. Hill and Mandy were arrested. Apparently, they were a married couple who made a living off fraud. They had indeed been scamming my ex-husband. Unbeknownst to me, both he and his parents had been swindled out of a lot of money. The new construction they introduced was actually second-hand. My ex-husband and his parents were almost stripped of everything. Thanks to going to the police, they narrowly avoided disaster. However, my ex-husband was severely reprimanded by the police for trying to sell my parents' house without permission. He was lucky to avoid being sent to prosecution, but if it had been later, he would have ended up in prison. It's a good thing that my son's father didn't become a criminal. The incident is now resolved. I moved my family register back to my parents' house from my brother's place, where I had it for safety. What a hassle it was. Later, through his lawyer, my ex-husband asked if there was a chance of remarrying. As if. I told them to focus on paying the compensation and child support on time instead of indulging in such convenient fantasies. His parents, not him, showed understanding for my blunt response. They reflected on how they had been deceived by Mr. Hill and Mandy and paid the compensation on his behalf. Right. It's crazy to think a son would cheat because of his lover's sweet talk. Normally, you'd scold him saying, "Don't do such foolish things." Child support will be paid diligently by him every month. I've learned from this ordeal and am determined to raise my son to understand the difference between right and wrong. I'll study how swindlers operate and teach my son as well. But maybe it's too early for fraud and money talks. My son is happily running around in the spacious yard of my parents' house. Mommy, I caught a grasshopper. Wow, that's great. Let's release it later. Seeing my son's bright smile makes me feel happy. Here, in the house where I grew up, my son and I will live freely and joyfully.
Finally, my luck is turning around. Huh? Now that the old man is dead, it's finally my time. Despite my father passing away not long ago, he dared to speak so disrespectfully. He had been supported by my father ever since we got married. Do you realize what you're saying? Yeah, I know. I'll be taking the land and the inheritance. I inherited a considerable amount, right? You've been scheming this all along? Of course. I couldn't wait for him to kick the bucket. He misunderstands everything. You could never do such a thing. Ha! No use acting tough. Here, take this. He threw something at me. Pick it up. What he threw was a completed divorce form. A divorce form? You can't do anything without me. That's why I'll make good use of your assets. What if I refuse? Are you stupid? What other choice do you have but to divorce? For me, this was an opportunity. Everything up to now had been a sham. And he didn't know. He didn't know my true self. Hey! What are you doing? What do you think? I'm leaving this house. You'll regret this. Right back at you. Wait. You won't be able to do anything if you leave. We'll see about that. Your company had dealings with mine, remember? My company? What are you talking about? You'll find out soon enough. Oh, and I'll take care of submitting this divorce form, so no worries. Thus, I left the house. I immediately submitted the divorce form. And then I called his company. It's me. The project is cancelled. And all the contracts we had are now void. Please wait. If you do that, my true self is the head of a company that manages 7,000 employees. I thought, now that it's come to this, I'll go all the way. What will he do next, I wonder? I'm Abby Brown, and I just turned 40. I thought, I've gotten quite old, haven't I? While I was lost in thought at home, I heard a voice calling me. It was my husband, Ryan. What are you doing there? Nothing. If you're bored, you could at least clean the house. Know your place. I sighed softly, unnoticed. It wasn't like this when we first met. I met Ryan just 2 years ago. Back then, I wasn't particularly interested in marriage. It might as well have been said that I was married to my job. Yet, I ended up marrying Ryan. It all started with my father. Huh? I'm fine. I don't plan to marry anyone no matter how many times I'm introduced. Now, don't say that. You're nearly 40, right? It's a bit much to still be single at that age. Mind your own business. I intended to refuse, but my father was stubborn. Day after day, he kept saying things like, "He's a good man, you'll see if you meet him." But I knew it was my father's strategy. So, how about it? Do you want to meet him? Not at all. And it seems like we had been having this conversation for almost a month. And, as usual, he tried to persuade me that day. No matter how many times you say it, my mind won't change. Then at least look at his photo, you can decide after that. I'll look at it, that's all. Oh. By the way, where did I put that photo? In your study, as usual? Right. Father went downstairs to his study to fetch a photo. Suddenly, I heard a loud thud from the direction of the study where he should have been. I rushed to check and found him lying face down. Dad? What happened? Hearing the commotion, my mother also came to the study. Mom. Even in such a moment, she remained composed. Abby, call an ambulance right away. Oh, okay. I called, and the ambulance arrived in about 15 minutes. My father was unconscious, but his heart was still beating. He was taken to the hospital and treated. It turned out that my father had a stroke. A blood clot had temporarily blocked a blood vessel, causing him to lose consciousness. Dad. Sorry, who would have thought I'd collapse? This is no laughing matter. He was soon allowed to go home as there were no other complications. However, my father had all the risk factors for his condition: high blood pressure, smoking, and drinking. The doctor advised him to be careful, but he seemed to take it as if it didn't concern him. From now on, no more alcohol or cigarettes for you. But those are my pleasures. What will you do if you collapse again? My father loved his nightly drinks, particularly fond of whiskey, collecting bottles from all over the country. Then, he made a proposal. If you insist so much, I have a condition too. A condition? This isn't a negotiation. If you want me to listen, you'll have to agree to my condition. And what's that condition? Meet a man I want to introduce to you. Huh? If you don't, I'll continue smoking and drinking more. It seemed like he was enjoying the situation. But if it meant he would live longer, I decided to accept his condition. All right, I'll meet him. Good. I'm glad you said that. Mother, who was in the kitchen, seemed exasperated. Good, let's not delay. I'll call him now. No, that's not okay. When we decide to do something, we do it without hesitation. That's our family motto. I've never heard that before. Well, I just decided now. I was always at the mercy of my father. Who would believe he was the president of a large corporation with thousands of employees? His employees would surely be shocked. And just as my father said, a man arrived. Sorry for the sudden call. This is Ryan Smith, a promising talent from a company we do business with. Nice to meet you. Ah, nice to meet you too. I'm Abby Brown. This was how I met Ryan, and despite it being our first meeting, we ended up having an unexpectedly engaging conversation about work. It turned out that my father and Ryan had met at a president's drinking party. Moreover, my father had said something outrageous to Ryan. By the way, I heard from President Brown that you were incredibly popular in school, turning down boys left and right. Is that true? Huh? What's that all about? I glared at my father. Don't glare like that. You said something weird again. What are you talking about? It's mostly true. Maybe a bit exaggerated. It's better not to believe everything Dad says. He tends to lie a lot. Is that so? If you can't discern between lies and truth, you're not trustworthy. That's why lies are sometimes necessary. What a convenient excuse. I was always being manipulated by my father. Later, we drank together. Of course, my father had a soft drink. Drunk, Ryan became talkative and revealed his ambitions. I'm going to be rich. Rich? Yes. I'll live in a house like this one, and eventually, I'll become a president, no matter what it takes. What do you mean by that? Exactly what I said. Then, Ryan fell asleep. For the night, he would sleep in the guest room. As I was cleaning up, my father came by. What did you think of him? I think he's a very interesting person. He reminds me a bit of you, Dad. Yes, I've thought so since we first met. And it seems his father used to be the president of a small company. He's passed away now, though. I see. He's a good man, anyway. Father was completely smitten with Ryan, but I could see why. He was charismatic, the type that pulls you in when he talks. The next morning, when I went to wake Ryan in the guest room, I heard voices as if he was talking to someone. I understand. Everything is going smoothly here. Yes, don't worry. I'll definitely accomplish it. I waited for the phone call to end before knocking. Good morning. Good morning. Sorry, it seemed like you were on the phone. Everything okay? Ah, that was my mother. She's a worrier. I see. My family is much the same. Ryan looked a bit troubled at that moment. Eventually, we ended up getting married. It was surprising even to me, but it was exciting as well. However, I was unaware of the incredible darkness he harbored. Ryan seemed quite happy to have become part of our family. Father even suggested we live with him, but Ryan and I decided we wanted to live by ourselves. Father then arranged an apartment for us. Let's keep in touch. Sure. At first, he was considerate, and every day was fresh and fun. But after a while, his behavior toward me became harsher. It felt like he was looking down on me. Did you clean the house? I just got back, so no. Can't you even do that? So, it was true after all. What are you talking about? This was how he greeted me when I returned from work. Listen well. From now on, you'll follow my orders. Why? Don't talk back, or I won't forgive you. Ryan wouldn't listen to anything I said. It became clear why he was acting this way. My father had called me a woman who couldn't do anything. Moreover, he apparently said I was incompetent at work and just a menial worker. I immediately complained to my father. Why would you say that? It was just a joke. Thanks to your joke, I'm having a hard time. Please clear this misunderstanding with him. Okay, but I can't believe he took it seriously. Father looked a bit surprised. Is it that surprising? No, sorry. I'll talk to him properly. Father explained to Ryan shortly after. Whether he was convinced or not, Ryan seemed to return to normal, but he still seemed skeptical of me. I couldn't stand it. Do you still believe what my father said? Huh? Does it look like that? The way you look at me. It feels like you're looking down on me. At that, Ryan bowed his head and begged for forgiveness. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I wasn't thinking. Well, as long as you understand, that's fine. Ryan appeared deeply affected by my words and began to be more considerate, talking less about work. However, I noticed he began to gauge my reactions. If he could just stop doing that, he would be a truly good husband. 6 months of these days passed when one afternoon, my mother called. Father had collapsed again and was taken to the hospital. What? Dad? He collapsed at home again. This time it might be serious. How bad is it? He's stable now. I'll go to the hospital right away. I rushed to see my father. Dad. When I arrived at the hospital, he was in surgery, and all I could do was pray. How is your father? You came. Of course. Ryan had been playing golf with a client. He hadn't answered his phone, so I had sent him a message. It's going to be okay, right? You know as well as I do that your father isn't that fragile. Maybe, but still. The surgery went on for hours, and I was on edge the entire time. Finally, the surgery was over. Doctor. How is my father? The surgery was successful. However, there might be some lasting language impairments. What's important is what comes next. Hearing there might be impairments left me feeling lost. It'll be okay. Thank you. Ryan gently placed his hand on my shoulder. At that moment, I felt truly grateful to be married to him. 2 days later, my father woke up. We were anxious since the doctor had mentioned possible language impairments, but thankfully, he defied our worries in a good way. Dad. You're okay. Is that you, Abby? And everyone else too. I've caused you all a lot of worry. I'm so relieved. I held back tears. Since my father would need to stay in the hospital for a while, we planned to visit him regularly. During one of these visits, my father shared something with me. Why did you do it? After you had quit for so long. I'm sorry. Ryan invited me after work. It's hard to say no to your son-in-law. That's not the issue here. This is the second time. I've really learned my lesson now. Turns out, my father hadn't quit drinking or smoking at all. And Ryan was involved too. After leaving the hospital, I rushed home, determined to confront Ryan. Why did you let Dad drink? What's gotten into you all of a sudden? Answer my question. Your dad seemed stressed from work, that's why. If this is the result, it's meaningless. You can't know for sure if the drink was the cause. But it might well have been the cause, couldn't it? What's the use in arguing about this? Are you trying to dodge the issue? Ryan walked away to his study, looking annoyed. From that day on, our communication almost ceased. He mostly ignored me when I tried to speak to him. Moreover, he was secretly up to something. He was often on the phone at night. At first, I thought he might be having an affair, but it seemed different. He occasionally mentioned things being on track or almost there. I felt I had heard similar things before but couldn't quite remember. Curiosity got the best of me, and I sneaked into his usually off-limits study while he was out. I thought, the last time I entered here was right after we got married. The room was tidy, nothing unusual at first glance. But the desk was cluttered. Among the mess, I found photos of my father and me, along with various company documents. I couldn't understand why he was collecting these. Suddenly, I heard the front door. Ryan was home. I thought, he's back. Not good. In my panic, I knocked over some items on the desk. I quickly picked them up and put them back. That's when I noticed something written in red on the back of a photo. I couldn't make out what it said before Ryan caught me. Hey. What are you doing here? Just thought I'd do some cleaning. Who said you could come in here? Answer me. Calm down, please. How can I stay calm? Did you see what's on the desk? Which is it? I didn't see anything. You've really done something terrible. He seemed very concerned about the desk. It must mean the items I saw were problematic for him. As I thought this, Ryan locked the room and slowly approached me. What are you planning to do? I need to make you understand your place. Stop. Ryan grabbed my arm forcefully. Listen. From now on, do not go against what I say. If you do, you'll see hell. His eyes were serious. I could tell that much. Soon after, Ryan changed the locks on the room to keep me out. Our relationship was no longer that of a married couple. I hesitated even to speak to him. The only solace was my father. Good you came. Yeah. You don't look well. What's wrong? Maybe I ate too much? Ryan, how are you doing? Is work going smoothly? Yes, thanks to your father, I was able to secure a major contract. I didn't really do anything. It's all thanks to your own abilities, Ryan. Everything seemed peaceful, but that was only when we were at the hospital. Ryan only put on a good face in front of my father. Continuing like this would only wear me down, both mentally and physically. Time flew by quickly, and today was the day to visit my father. I'm going to visit Dad, but I'll pass. You go alone. I think Dad is looking forward to seeing you. I went last time, that's enough. But enough. The hospital is far away, and I'm busy. How could he say such a thing? But rebelling could provoke an unknown fear in me. In the end, I went to see my father alone. Initially, my father was despondent about his hospitalization, but his natural cheerfulness meant he soon made friends with other patients. Dad. I found you. It's time for your temperature check, we need to go back. Is it that time already? Then let's head back. He said goodbye to the other patients he was chatting with and returned to his room. Isn't Ryan with you today? He's a bit busy today. He sends his regards. I see. I couldn't bring myself to tell him that Ryan didn't want to come. How are things with Ryan lately? Why do you ask all of a sudden? Just wondering if you two are getting along well. Well, it's okay. Didn't you ask that before? Did I? I've been forgetful lately. It's just as well, it's only you today. What do you mean? I have something important to discuss today. His news was unexpectedly shocking. My life was about to accelerate, and with it, my feelings towards Ryan were turning to hatred. So, what is it? Listen carefully. I'm falling apart. Continuing as president might become difficult for me. What? What will happen to the company? That's why I've found a suitable replacement. Who? Of course, it's you, Abby. Me? That's impossible. It's all right. No one is accustomed to it at first. But you've been by my side for years, watching. I've already discussed this with the other executives. Even so, to just spring this on me. Please. I had never seen my father so pleading. He had always been the one to protect the company and our family. Perhaps now it was my turn to protect him. After all, I am his daughter. Okay. Good. I'm glad you agreed. But you have to promise to rest and get better. Understood. And don't tell anyone about becoming president yet. Okay, I got it. Not even Ryan. Not Ryan either? Got it? Father's eyes were incredibly serious. I couldn't understand why he said that, but I agreed to follow his instructions. The reason behind his words would only become clear much later. For now, even though I was president, I couldn't just start giving orders. I needed to relearn everything my father had been doing. Fortunately, our company's executives were competent and truly supportive. 2 months passed. You've been coming home late. What have you been doing? I've been loaded with work. Some of the younger staff quit recently. Huh. I wondered if this lie would work, but it seemed to pass. Anyway, listen to this. I secured a huge contract today. And it's with your company. Oh, is that so? I had heard that a contract was finalized today, but I didn't know it involved Ryan. You should try to learn from this. Though, I doubt you could. I was irked by his comment and retorted without thinking. You won't know until you try. What? I realized I had said something dangerous. Provoking Ryan was risky, so I quickly tried to correct myself. That's right. There's no way I could do it. As long as you understand. A few days later, a call came from the hospital. My father's condition had suddenly changed, and tonight was critical. Unable to sit still, I left work and rushed to the hospital. By the time I arrived, my mother was already there, clearly exhausted. Abby. How is Dad? He's in his room right now. In the room, my father was lying down with a ventilator attached. He was barely breathing, and it seemed he could stop at any moment. The doctor mentioned there might have been a new clot in his brain. Then what about surgery? The doctor seemed hesitant to speak. The surgery was successful. However, the impact on the brain was more severe than expected. He might never wake up. I felt helpless that I couldn't do anything for my father. Before he collapsed, he didn't want the surgery. He's been having memory issues lately and was scared of forgetting his own family. Then why? He was still worried about his family. He didn't want to leave things unresolved. Then my father woke up. It's rare for someone to wake up from this state. The doctor was visibly surprised. Abby, are you there? Yes, I'm here. Listen carefully to what I'm about to say. I'm listening. Be careful of Ryan. I'm sorry things turned out like this. What do you mean? There's an envelope in the drawer of my study. Look at it. Dad? As he spoke, his breathing became weaker and he passed away. Everything went dark before my eyes. Are you okay? Yeah. I just need a moment to calm down. And I need to call Ryan. I tried to call him, but there was no response. Isn't he picking up? No. Ryan never came to the hospital. Eventually, I returned home, and Ryan was acting as if nothing had happened. Why the rush? Why didn't you answer your phone? I was busy. What happened? Dad passed away. Just now at the hospital. Ryan looked down and began to tremble. What? Finally. Now my plan is nearing its final stage. What are you talking about? It doesn't concern you. Well, maybe it does. Then, Ryan locked himself in his study with a creepy smile. There are many things I am curious about, but right now, there are many things I must do. I headed to my parents' house to prepare for my father's funeral. Thank you for helping, even though you're busy. What are you talking about? This comes first. We shared the responsibilities for arranging the funeral. During a break, my mother mentioned something. By the way, didn't your father tell you to check his study? Ah. That's right. I'll go check now. My father's study was at the end of the hallway on the first floor. It had been a while since I last entered. Inside, I did as instructed and opened the drawer. Inside was an envelope, and I quickly looked through its contents. After reading it, everything that had happened became clear. I thought, so this is why Ryan. This was something my father had gathered for me. On the back of the envelope, there was a handwritten message from him. Reading it, I realized I didn't need to hold back anymore. Gradually, my anger and hatred towards Ryan began to boil. I swore to keep these feelings hidden until the right time. The funeral went smoothly, and I believe we gave my father a proper send-off. Of course, this was not the end. Later, my mother called and we gathered at the family home. It was just my mother, me, and Ryan. Thank you for coming. What's going on today? We're going to open Dad's will. When did he prepare that? Apparently, my father had made arrangements while he was in the hospital. The contents of the unveiled will were as follows. The family home and half of the estate my father left were inherited by my mother, and the rest went to me. But I inherited more than just that. The land is mine too? I wouldn't know what to do with the land. I'm sure you will find a good use for it. I'll think about it. Glancing to the side, I saw Ryan faintly smiling. The reading of the will was over, and my mother suggested we go out for a meal. I have to head back, sorry. What? After Mom invited us? You have a problem with that? Not really. Good. See ya. Ryan left just like that. All I could do was sigh. Sorry, Mom. I think I'll go back too. That might be for the best. We can always eat another time. Sorry. See you later. After leaving the family home, I quickly followed Ryan. He might be up to something again. When I got home, Ryan was sprawled on the sofa as if he owned the place. What took you so long? Where have you been dawdling? I came straight home. Well, sit down. I have something to talk about. I sat down, though I had a bad feeling about this. Ryan began to speak with a laugh. Finally, my luck is turning around. Huh? Now that the old man is dead, my time has finally come. Get it? So this was his true nature. Do you even understand what you're saying? Yeah, I understand. I'll be taking the land and the assets. I inherited a considerable amount, right? You've been aiming for this all along? Of course. I couldn't wait for him to kick the bucket. He misunderstands everything. You could never do such a thing. Ha! No use acting tough. Here, take this. He threw something at me. Pick it up quickly. What he threw was a completed divorce form. A divorce form? You can't do anything without me. That's why I'll make good use of your assets. Hand them over to me. You're still saying that? It's true, isn't it? You're useless at home, so I, being superior, will take it all. What an idiot he really is. What if I refuse? Are you stupid? What other choice do you have but to divorce? For me, this was an opportunity. Everything up to now had been a sham. And he didn't know. He didn't know my true self. Hey! What are you doing? What do you think? I'm leaving this house. You'll regret this. Right back at you. Wait. You won't be able to do anything if you leave. We'll see about that. Your company had dealings with mine, remember? My company? What are you talking about? You're just an employee. You'll find out soon enough. Oh, and I'll take care of submitting this divorce form, so no worries. With that, I left the house. I headed straight to the main street and immediately made a call. Yes. Can you come now? 10 minutes later, a hired car picked me up. Where to? For now, let's head to the city office. Understood. At the city office, I submitted the divorce papers, which I had signed in the car. I wanted to be divorced as soon as possible. I wanted nothing to do with such scum. Afterward, I drove to a certain location. When I decide to do something, I act immediately. That's our family motto. I continued driving straight to the company. I entered the president's office and sat down. Thank you for your time. I'm Abby. Sorry to come unannounced, but there's something important I need to discuss with President Morris immediately. What might that be? About that project we were advancing. I've left that in Ryan's hands. I'm aware of that. Right, you two are married. Yes, about that project, I want it completely halted. What did you say? And I'm terminating all contracts we currently have with you. Doing that would bankrupt our company. That may be true. But it's your employee who is to blame. What? Please bring Ryan with you to my house at 11 tomorrow. What does that mean? You'll see. I'll see you tomorrow. I hung up the phone. Honestly, I bear no grudge against President Morris, but this is necessary. I'm using him for my revenge against Ryan. After all, I have something special up my sleeve. The next day, I waited in the president's office for Ryan and his arrival. Ms. Brown, your 11 a.m. appointment is here. Let them in. They entered, and Ryan froze when he saw me. I almost laughed at his stunned expression. Welcome, thank you for coming. Why are you here? Because I'm the president of this company. I kept it quiet from President Morris. It would be troublesome if you knew, wouldn't it? So, what about the contract? Right, about that. Please, look at this first. I handed over the envelope my father had entrusted to me. Is this true? Everything here was investigated by my father before he died. Ryan, you have done something terrible. What? Ryan had been securing contracts using bribes and illegal methods, all of which were detailed in the records. The amount of time it must have taken to compile all this information. What a foolish man. Damn it. Even so, I have a right to inherit the assets. It wouldn't be right not to honor my father. First off, you have no right to the assets I inherited. There should be a division of assets. I know that. Unfortunately for you, that isn't recognized in the division. You should have studied up. Where did I go wrong? From the beginning. Ryan's father had been a president but had passed away, apparently by suicide. A major factor was his company being cut off by another company. All of this was also investigated by my father. Importantly, that company had a name almost identical to ours. I explained this to Ryan. Essentially, all of this was a misunderstanding by you. That's a lie. I heard it from my mother. That can't be. What if the story you heard was wrong? Plus, there's no record of any dealings with your father's company in the past. How could this happen? What was it all for? Your actions have caused trouble for many people. You're going to be held responsible. Wait. President Morris, can I leave the rest to you? Depending on how things go, I might reconsider the cancellation of our deals. Of course. I will handle it immediately. Then goodbye. Don't ever show me your face again. After that, Ryan was practically dragged out of the office by President Morris. I never thought it would come to this, but I wonder where my father had first noticed something was wrong. Now, I'll never get the chance to ask him. But I feel a bit relieved. Shortly after, President Morris contacted me. I see. Thank you for handling this. As a result, Ryan was fired. Not only that, but it appears he had been embezzling company funds to pay for bribes. Now, preparations are being made to press charges. That seems like a fair response. Amidst all this, I received a call from Ryan. Everything you said was right. About what? I spoke to my mother again. It turns out it was all a misunderstanding. My father hadn't left a will either. I see. Can I ask you something? Was encouraging my father to drink all part of your plan? Yes. I see. I'm sorry. It's too late for apologies now. From now on, you're on your own. I understand. I'm not supporting you. Just being sarcastic. Go to hell. I hung up the phone and deleted all his contact information. I had almost forgotten, but on the back of a photo in Ryan's study, written in red pen, was the word revenge target. It was all a mistake from the start, but to think I was targeted. I sat on the sofa in the president's office, reminiscing about the words written by my father in the envelope. Abby, you are my pride and joy. Do as you wish. I believe in you. I had never been told something like that before. To ensure my father can rest peacefully in heaven, I will protect the company he left behind with my life.
I'm Rachel, a 30-year-old office worker. I work in the designing department of a construction company, and currently, I mostly work from home. I go to the office about twice a month for meetings and conferences. It seems that others are envious since about half of the staff come to the office every day. My boss told us the workers in our department would continue working from home. The best part of working from home is avoiding the rush hour commute. I live quite far from my company, about an hour away. It's shocking to think I used to waste about 2 hours commuting every day. Although I receive a commuting allowance, which means no financial burden, it is physically demanding. Another benefit of not going to the office is not having to meet annoying colleagues. I get along with most people, but there is one senior woman I find difficult. She is Nancy, a year older than me, and an acquaintance from university. We were in the same seminar since I majored in design, and we had spoken before. This senior woman, who was not very close, started meddling when I joined the company. Feel free to ask me if there's anything you don't understand. I thought I could rely on her, but contrary to her words, she was not dependable. She was also assigned to the designing department, but was transferred to another department after about 6 months due to some issues. It seems she found out about my joining the company right away. A few days after I started, she invited me to dinner and said, "Introduce me to the male employees who joined with you this year. Some good-looking guys have joined, right?" Her main purpose was to get introductions to my male colleagues. I thought she might listen to my work troubles, but her requests were the main topic. Moreover, even though she invited me, she said, "I don't have any money on me. Can you treat me this time? I'll treat you next time." She pushed the payment onto me. We never went out to eat during university, so I didn't know much about her true nature. She continued to invite me to meals, and I always ended up paying. I had never seen her with close friends in the company. Perhaps she was disliked. It seemed she was happy that a junior like me, who would listen to her, had joined the company. At first, I had no acquaintances, so I reluctantly spent time with her. However, I soon got along with my department colleagues and stopped going out to eat with her. Honestly, dining with her was unpleasant as she only kept bad-mouthing the boss and other colleagues. Additionally, she boasts about her dating history with wealthy men even though I never asked. I only date rich men. I wouldn't consider a regular employee from our company. Just the other day, she insisted I introduce her to my male colleagues, which almost made me laugh. Holding back laughter, I accidentally spoke my mind. "Is that so? Do you have someone you're dating now?" Then she gave me a scary look, glaring at me intensely after I casually said something like that. I realized I had said something wrong, but it was too late. I had upset her. "You're quite cheeky. You think I don't have a boyfriend?" "No, that's not what I meant. I was just wondering who the wonderful person you're dating might be." No matter how much I tried to explain, her anger did not subside. If I had to pay for the meal and get scolded this much, I definitely wouldn't want to dine together anymore. After about a year, I began to decline her invitations. "Lately, you've been turning down my invitations, haven't you?" she said, sounding displeased. "I'm sorry. My home is far, and it's tough. I promise I'll join you next time." I used the distance as an excuse to avoid her. Others in the department also said she couldn't do her job, but always acted so high and mighty. I learned from someone who worked with her when she joined that she got scolded by the manager because she acted important without understanding the job. Her behavior must have been so terrible that even the gentle manager got upset. She did her job without listening to her colleagues and was kicked out of this department in half a year. She is disliked in every department and has now settled in a role doing miscellaneous tasks in the General Affairs Department. Her relationships with men seem to be causing issues too. According to him, she approaches any handsome or wealthy employee, even if they are married. Indeed, she herself has said that she would only date wealthy men. "Rachel, just because you're a junior, it doesn't mean you should get too involved with her." He warned me like this. Fortunately, the world has been moving towards promoting remote work for a few years now. This is great for me since I can do my design work from home. It eliminates the need for commuting and seeing that unpleasant senior. Around that time, I got a call from my brother, who lives at our family home. "It's serious, Dad has collapsed." My father was living at home with my mother, my brother, and his wife. He had been fine when I saw him a little while ago, so the sudden news from my brother shocked me. I rushed to the hospital where my father had been taken, but it was already too late. My father had passed away from a heart attack. For about a week afterward, I was so depressed I barely remember anything. My mother just kept crying too. But my brother and sister-in-law bravely took care of all the funeral arrangements. I said to my brother, "I still can't believe Dad is gone." Then my mother, who was there, said, "You love Dad so much, this must be particularly shocking for you, right?" But all I could do was nod. My father hadn't left a will, but my brother said, "I'll take over the family home, so is cash okay for you? If you're looking after Mom, I don't need anything." I am grateful to my brother and his wife for always taking care of our parents. So I declined the inheritance. It's not a huge amount, so just take it. Dad would have wanted it that way. Convinced by her, I ended up inheriting more money than I had expected. With the opportunity to work from home and not needing to go to the office often, I decided to move a bit farther away. This would allow me to live in a much better place than I do now. I have been living in a cheap, run-down apartment since my student days. In this old apartment, I was always nervous about my voice carrying over to the neighbors during online meetings. If I had a room where I could speak loudly, I could work without concern. I had always dreamed of living in a nice apartment one day. For this reason, I had been saving little by little. With the money inherited from my father, I could afford a nice apartment a bit further out in the suburbs. I found a newly constructed apartment building at the perfect timing and decided to move there. The commute would take much longer than before, but it's only once a month. Plus, I would be traveling around midday, so I wouldn't have to deal with rush hour traffic. I took the plunge and signed the contract and moved to my new place. During an online meeting, I told my colleagues about the move. I've decided to move into a brand new apartment. I announced proudly, and everyone seemed pleased for me. Then, a female colleague chimed in. "I've actually moved too." She had just gotten married and was bashful about it. Her husband is quite wealthy, and unlike me, she moved into a luxury high-rise apartment in downtown. "Your apartment must be much bigger, right?" She was modest, but her room, visible through the camera, was spacious with high ceilings. Everyone watching on the monitor noticed this and joked. Clearly, she's in a different league from us ordinary folks. Her move had also been a hot topic in the office. When she got married, it caused quite a stir due to her wealthy husband. However, within our department of remote workers, the more surprising news was about me, who seemed less affluent, moving into a new apartment. Because it was a new building, my colleagues were even more astonished. On my first day back to the office since moving, I hoped I wouldn't run into Nancy. I didn't think she knew I had moved, but I dreaded any comments from her. Unfortunately, just as I was leaving, I was spotted by her. "Rachel, that's terrible of you. Not telling me something so important." We hadn't seen each other since we started working from home. Since her tone implied she already knew I had moved, I apologized. "Oh, sorry for not having told you. I thought it was not a big deal." Hearing that, she smirked and gazed at me. "So, you've managed to get yourself a nice apartment too?" The meaningful smile on her face was unsettling. Indeed, I was able to purchase the apartment with the money inherited from my father. But I wondered why she knew about it. "Thanks to you, it seems luck is coming my way too." With a smirk, she walked away. I was surprised at how easily she disappeared. I had expected her to nitpick or make snide remarks. Her last words were also unclear. What did she mean by her luck turning because of my move? I had no clue. Still, since she didn't invite me over, I could breathe a sigh of relief and go home. A few days later, the intercom rang around noon, and when I checked the monitor, I saw Nancy standing there. Somehow, she had found out my address and was holding a large suitcase. "Hurry up and open this. I came all the way here for you," she yelled loudly. "Even though you're supposed to be rich, you moved to some countryside apartment? And it's not even as luxurious as I thought." She spoke with a considerable amount of dissatisfaction, which was quite rude. If I let her into my apartment, she would probably stay. So I hurriedly headed to the ground floor entrance. I wanted to send her away before she bothered the other residents. "What's going on? Why do you have so much luggage?" To my surprise, Nancy responded with a triumphant smile. "Your rich husband's child is here. I got pregnant. So get out." Even though she said that, I had no idea what she was talking about. Huh? But I'm single? Upon hearing my words, she cruelly chuckled. "Don't lie so blatantly. I know you married into wealth." When she mentioned marrying into wealth, I remembered something. A colleague in the same department who recently got married has the same last name as me. Moreover, both of us moved, and Nancy probably misunderstood. "Well, are you really pregnant?" When I looked at her with suspicion, she suddenly faltered. "Yes. 3 months pregnant." I continued to inquire. "Do you know the husband's name?" She mentioned the name of a colleague's husband, somehow having found out. "That person is not my husband. He's the husband of my colleague." She seemed to be getting confused with just this one statement. She stared at my face with surprise, still not understanding. "I'm not married yet, so it's impossible for you to be pregnant with my husband's child, right? Unless there is a time machine?" Seeing me laugh confidently, she finally seemed to realize her mistake. "Huh? So, I came here due to such a misunderstanding?" She suddenly turned pale and panicked. "What am I supposed to do? I even quit my job." I was also surprised by her statement. Did she really believe that she could kick out my colleague and live with a wealthy person? When she mentioned the other day that her luck had turned, it seemed to refer to this. Of course, the story about her pregnancy was likely a lie. "Did you quit your job?" She seemed too shaken to hear my question. "Are you okay? What's wrong?" Concerned about trembling Nancy, I spoke gently, and suddenly, she lunged at me. "Tell me the address of that employee who married into wealth." With a face like a demon, she glared at me. It was obvious she was planning to go to my colleague's apartment next and pull the same stunt. "I don't know. We never meet directly due to remote work." She kept insisting I contact the colleague for her address, but I kept refusing. If Nancy barged into her place, it would cause her trouble too. Perhaps giving up, she left with a large suitcase. I thought it was over, but I called the female colleague just in case. I warned her to be careful because a strange female employee I know might show up. That night, she contacted me, confirming Nancy had indeed come over. "Are you okay? Hasn't she done anything to you?" To my concern, she replied as if nothing had happened. "My apartment has security guards stationed." So, the noisy woman was taken away by the police soon after she arrived. Truly, unlike my apartment, which lacks such measures, a genuine luxury apartment is well protected. That person was from our company? Since she seemed unaware, I informed her about Nancy. "Don't worry. Apparently, she's already resigned, so she has nothing to do with us." We laughed about it. Nancy, taken away by the police, was released but got an earful from her parents. Since she had quit her job, she was taken back home. Furthermore, it was discovered she frequented nightclubs, showering her favorite worker with money, accumulating a hefty debt that her parents had to pay off. In return, Nancy, dragged back home, is now being closely monitored by her parents and made to work at a nearby workplace. It seems like she's facing the consequences for not working diligently. Thanks to that, I can live peacefully without ever having to see her again. She said she'd only date wealthy men, but I don't care. Since transitioning to remote work, I've felt lonely without any chances to meet new people. That's when I coincidentally ran into an acquaintance from my university days. He was a classmate of Nancy, and I was dragged along to the same parties she organized. We never paid much attention to each other during university, but we bonded over the shared experience of being victims dragged into those parties. Somehow, I found his simplicity and kindness appealing. From then on, we started meeting up alone. One of the reasons I considered buying an apartment was because I was thinking about marrying him. He's just an ordinary office worker, also working remotely most of the time. Since we both don't need to commute to work, we discussed living together in a spacious apartment. When Nancy came to my apartment and shouted about being pregnant with my husband's child, I actually doubted him. She knows him, so there's no way she would mistake him for a wealthy husband. If he were wealthy, he might have been snatched by her. Anyway, thanks to her, we came to know each other and are now getting married. We want to live happily in our new apartment.